When parents get divorced, it's not just the home life that gets turned upside down. The school, yeah, the school often becomes this accidental battleground where all the stress from home spills over and starts to affect a child's education. So let's dive into this really complex intersection and see what's really going on. A permission slip for a school trip. It sounds so simple, right? But for divorced parents, that simple piece of paper can turn into an absolute firestorm. Who has the legal right to sign it? What happens if the other parent doesn't agree? This one little document can suddenly expose this whole tangled web of conflicts that schools and families are trying to figure out every single day. And look, we're talking about way more than just paperwork here. When those lines between home and schools start to get all blurry, the consequences for a child's learning and their emotional health can be huge. It really is a minefield, and every single step counts. All right, so the first and honestly the biggest challenge, it all comes down to communication. Or to be more accurate, when communication completely breaks down. Because when co-parents are not on the same page, the school gets stuck in the middle, and ultimately it's the child who ends up paying the price for all that chaos. Just try to put yourself in a teacher's shoes for a second. They get an email from mom about a homework problem, and then a totally different, maybe even contradictory email from dad about the exact same thing. When you don't have that unified front, it just creates total confusion, and it makes it almost impossible for the school staff to figure out how to actually help the student. So what does this actually look like for the kid? Well, they hear one thing from one parent and something else entirely from the other, which is incredibly confusing and stressful. Crucial information about their grades or their health or some new behavior, it just gets lost in the shuffle. And the long-term fallout, it can be really, really serious. A learning intervention that they desperately need might get missed. A behavioral red flag gets ignored because no single person has the whole picture. Okay, now let's talk about when the communication breakdown is, well, deliberate. This is what happens when one parent intentionally cuts the other parent out of the loop. We're talking about things like hiding report cards, forgetting to forward emails from the teacher, or even setting up parent-teacher conferences and not telling the other person. I mean, can you imagine? For a child, this is just an impossible spot to be in. They're literally stuck in the middle, feeling like they have to pick a side. They might even start feeling guilty just so being close to the parent who's being left out, or feel like they have to keep secrets or hide good grades. All this does is create inconsistent support at home and throw more fuel on the fire of the family conflict. And all this miscommunication, it leads us straight into the next big problem area, the legal and logistical maze. This is where having crystal clear rules and the right paperwork isn't just a good idea. It's absolutely critical for a child's stability and, frankly, their safety. I mean, think about it. If the school doesn't have the parenting plan, if they don't have that custody order on file, they're basically flying blind. They have no official document telling them who has the authority to make decisions, who is actually allowed to pick up the child, or if there are any restrictions they need to know about. This just puts everyone in a horrible spot. The school could accidentally violate a court order, which is a massive legal problem, and the kid? They're the one who becomes a pawn in this power struggle, with teachers and principals totally confused about whose signature is actually valid for that field trip or for an educational assessment. So what happens when parents are supposed to make decisions together, but they just can't agree on something as huge as where their kids should go to school? You've got one parent saying, look, they need stability, their friends are here. The other is saying, but this other school has way better programs, it's for their future. Both might be right, but being stuck in the middle of that debate creates so much uncertainty for the child. Okay, let's switch gears to something that's purely about logistics and safety. Divorce almost always means new addresses, new phone numbers, different people on the pickup list. If that information isn't kept perfectly up to date by both parents, well, the risks are huge. Just picture this. A child gets hurt on the playground. The school nurse goes to the emergency file and finds conflicting phone numbers or numbers that are out of service. That delay in reaching a parent could be the difference between a minor issue and a major one. For a kid, that kind of experience just eats away at their basic sense of security. It sends a message that the adults in their life might not be there when they're really needed. All right, so now we get to the stuff that's often the most visible and frankly the most damaging. This is what happens when those private arguments between parents don't stay private and they spill right out onto school grounds for everyone to see. This right here, this is the scenario every kid dreads. A heated argument in the car pickup line, a super tense conversation at a parent-teacher conference, a fight at the school play. When the school turns into a stage for their parents' drama, the child is the one stuck right in the spotlight. The emotional toll is just massive. We're talking intense embarrassment, shame, and stress. The child might even start to avoid school events, not because they don't want to be there, but because they're afraid of a public scene. This can make them pull away from friends, and it can also make teachers and staff hesitant to even engage with the family, which hurts everybody in the long run. Even something that seems so small, like a negative lunch balance, it can be a really big deal. It might seem minor, but it's usually just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to fights about who pays for what, school fees, supplies, field trips, you name it. And the child feels this in a very real, very direct way. They're the one in the lunch line whose account is empty. They're the one told they can't go on the class trip because the fee wasn't paid. They're the one who doesn't have the right calculator for math class. This isn't just about money. It's about feeling left out, losing confidence, and not feeling like you belong. The conflict can also be a lot more sneaky, like when one parent actively undermines a special education plan that the other one fought for, creating total chaos for a child with learning challenges. Or, in the really toxic situations, one parent might use the school to try and turn the child against the other parent, essentially making the child a messenger in their adult war. Okay, so we've definitely laid out the minefield. But here's the good news. Most of these problems can actually be avoided with some smart, proactive planning. So let's open up the co-parenting playbook and look at the strategies for creating a stable school environment for the child. So let's walk through this playbook step by step. 1. Create a united front. Give the school one single contact sheet with both parents' info and give them a copy of the parenting plan. 2. Clear up any legal confusion. File all your decision-making documents with the office. 3. Build a bridge for communication. Just ask the school to automatically copy both parents on all emails. 4, and this is a big one, keep conflict off campus. Period. Handle disputes privately. And 5, spell out the financial duties. Put everything about who pays for what right in the parenting plan, so there's no question later. This table here is a fantastic summary, really. It shows you a direct line from each problem we talked about to a specific practical solution. For every potential issue, there's a clear step you can take. It's all about seeing the potential problems before they happen and just getting ahead of them. And let's be really, really clear about something. All this work, the paperwork, the planning, those tough conversations, it's not really about making life easier for the parents. It is 100% about creating a protective bubble of stability around the child so they can do what they're supposed to be doing at school. Learning, growing, and just being a kid. When it all comes down to it, this is the big idea. You can go out and buy all the best notebooks, the fanciest backpack, the newest laptop, but for a child who is navigating a divorce, the best, most valuable thing they can possibly have is knowing that their parents, even if they don't live together anymore, are on the same team when it comes to their education.